Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Oh, I guess, anyway, welcome back, folks. Welcome back. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. Thank you for joining us. This is the first hour of this live broadcast here on TNT. We're coming at you live and direct on Thursday here, and we're trying to touch some of the biggest stories internationally. Great to have you guys with us right now. And if we're able to, I wanted to bring our next guest onto the stage. He is an international human rights lawyer. He's also a journalist and author of a new book called Foreign Entanglements, which is out right now, chronicling the Biden corruption saga in Ukraine. Arnaud Develay, I think we have him on the line right now. Arnaud, are you with us?
Hello, Patrick. Yeah, I hear you just fine.
Okay. It's great to have you with us, Arnaud. Unfortunately, I don't know if we have a picture for you or not. Hopefully we can resolve that issue. But let me see. Sorry, you guys have thrown a curveball to me here. Let me just work this out. I'm trying to... there we go. There you are, Arnaud. Great to have you with us. Appreciate it. Arnaud, normally we're talking about Ukraine and Russia, and a new story has cropped up which has huge international significance. That is, the International Criminal Court has finally pulled its finger out with the Israelis. Now, quite an extraordinary series of events, Arnaud. Personally, I didn't think it was ever going to happen. I heard threats about it. Kareem Khan sat on this for months after initially going to Rafah. You remember he made the comments to the press. So we're gathering in evidence. Nothing for 6 months. All of a sudden, the filing happens. What do you make of this?
Well, I would say it's a work in progress. We need to keep in mind that for now, he recommended that it's a three-panel judge that must first determine if the issuance of warrants is warranted, as it were. So I guess Kareem Khan can just somehow, wash his hand from the whole thing by, claiming that he did his job. And to the extent that three-judge panel decides not to go forward with his recommendation, I would say, it's a face-saving situation, which is compounded by the fact also that he requested that warrants be issued against three senior officials from the Hamas resistance movement. So somehow he can plead plausible deniability in the sense where, he can't really be accused of being partial, although much could be said about the factual predicate pertaining to the warrants that he seeks to have the three-judge panel issue against those senior officials of the Hamas. So, but then again, it's almost like he had no choice in a way because of obviously the characteristic of the events happening in Gaza for let's remind our viewers 7-8 months now, with daily footage leaking out all over the place in the internet. Hundreds, if not thousands, of reports, corroborated testimonies. Organization, NGOs providing also huge quantities of material. So, and to the extent there was this appeal over the court for many years now, bearing on the court being essentially an instrument of Western imperialism, mostly concerned with the prosecution of African leaders or Central/Eastern European, should I say, maverick leaders. The last of which, obviously, was last March, with the warrant being issued on March 17th against Vladimir Putin. Again, on factual predicates which are really flimsy at best. So, but it's par for the course when it comes down to the Israeli issue. And as we saw, the reaction in Washington were hysterical, not to mention almost grotesque, i.e., with the letter being sent out by no less than 12 senators to Kareem Khan and his staff, essentially threatening them mafia-like, don't do this, so it'll cost you. This was compounded today by Benjamin Netanyahu himself, somehow alluding to the fact that he won't have a problem to travel, but Kareem Khan might. I don't know what that means, but that does not sound very good. Sounds all again like the talk of a mafioso, but sure doesn't sound like someone would.
What is the technicals on that, Arnaud? Because when Netanyahu says that, he says, I'm not going to have a problem traveling. Well, is that true? Because pretty much the entirety of Europe, most Asian countries, most African countries, most South American countries are signatories to the ICC. There's only a few countries that are not. So, and I think Russia might be off of Netanyahu's travel list at the moment. Relationship is shaky right now with Russia. China, not so great. So that leaves the United States and a couple of others. He can't really travel to any European country, can he? I mean, he's not. They might be. Are they obligated to arrest him?
Well, to the extent most EU countries have signed and ratified the Rome Statute, they are obligated to the extent a bona fide warrant gets delivered and issued, they are obligated per the statute to proceed to the arrest to the extent the concerned and targeted individual happens to step on their soil. But as with everything pertaining to Israel, obviously, nothing is black nor white. As of today, Norway and Germany are the only two countries that I know of that have explicitly come out and said that they would honor their obligation per the statute. But France is not the case. France actually, Stéphane de Séjourné, the French foreign minister, actually met with Mr. Katz, the Israeli foreign minister, his counterpart, and in a very cozy photo op, essentially derided, the whole treatment that the ICC is dishing out to the Israeli regime. So, and that includes as well, the fact that France is trying to make up for having voted in favor of the creation of a Palestinian state, i.e., two states living side by side, even though everybody who's remotely informed about the conflict knows that this is factually impossible to accomplish under current circumstances there. But that was enough to draw the ire of the Israeli government. And to the extent now we have this ICC warrant, the French have somehow derided, Kareem Khan, and some opposition figures in France have even called for France to withdraw from the ICC. So, to the extent Netanyahu and or Gallant might not be able to travel to many of the signatory countries' territories, I would advance the position that Netanyahu really needs to be able to travel to Washington and Paris, maybe even London. And that's about it. That's all he needs, to get diplomatic cover and, financial backup and support as far as weapons and munitions are concerned and shells. So it's somehow, I don't know. For now, like I said, we'll have to see and wait what happens with that, three-judge panel, see if they will go forward. If they don't, this will end with a wimp, essentially, and will bring discredit to the court. But obviously, it almost seems like, I hope I'm wrong, but, it could be but a stunt pulled by the ICC to try to recover a measure of legitimacy, and everybody is somewhat in on it, including the Israelis, who, true to form, basically just got hysterical after the announcement, labeling the ICC as an anti-Semitic institutions. But then again, with the Israeli, even the UN Charter is anti-Semitic, although this is the document that got him to have a claim to at least half of the land back in 1947, even though we all know what happened thereafter. So, it's par for the course again with the theatrics we see within the UN chambers with the permanent Israeli ambassador there, one day borrowing a yellow star, claiming that he will wear it for as long as it takes to get people to understand that it's the worst pogrom, since the Holocaust, or as we've seen recently, by shredding a copy of the UN Charter in a very, dramatic fashion. So it's what's interesting though is Lindsey Graham actually, and I don't think he was faking it, when he exclaimed that, if we allow the ICC to somehow get away with doing this to the Israeli, we might just be next. And that's interesting because a very, very, very fresh development in terms of statements emanating from the court tends to point to a lot of those countries having somehow provided material support to the Israeli ethnic cleansing in Gaza as being tantamount to be recipients of warrants themselves. So we will see. Somehow, this whole sequence is unprecedented, to be sure, and we don't quite know really what's going on behind the scenes. We know the West can, really show itself to be very persuasive when it wants certain results out of UN organs. We've seen it with Jose Bustani, when he was threatened openly by John Bolton.
That's the former director of the OPCW, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, also based in The Hague. He was threatened, and his family as well, Arnaud. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And they live in New York, so obviously, this was something to take seriously. Accident happened, but this is, this is the true face. Yes.
Just going down the countries there. So Britain's a signatory to the Rome Statute. They're a member of the ICC. So that precludes a journey to London by Netanyahu. Paris, Germany has said they will respect the court, and Germany has been a steadfast ally to Israel, and some would say a partner in these war crimes themselves. They've even said publicly, which doesn't surprise me, Germany's usually very consistent with international law and institutions, the treaties that they've explicitly opted into. But that's pretty much right across the board in Europe. So I believe Canada is also a signatory to this court as well, if I'm not mistaken. So pretty much most of NATO, aside from the United States. So, I mean, if you look at this from an international political point of view, this sort of has the effect that it's had on Vladimir Putin with the indictment, whereby, if he wants to go to a G20 summit in a certain country, they have to make the calculation of whether that country is going to act on that ICC arrest warrant. That was a big problem in South Africa. I think it was for the BRICS summit. South Africa came out and said, Ramaphosa and his party said, well, we'll consider opting out of the ICC if it means that, we won't be able to welcome the Russian president in our country. So it creates this kind of political tension there and kind of forces this as a major issue, becomes a partisan issue, like in France, as you said. So I think, personally, I think this is positive. There's been a lot of critics of the court, but overall, I think this is positive because it sends a very strong symbolic. I'm sorry. a very strong symbolic signal to the Israelis as to what the international norms are. That signal has hardly been sent in the past. This is it seems to me, Arnaud, this is almost, I mean, there's been a lot of UN resolutions and so forth, but this takes it even a step further. And it's, I don't know what your opinion is. Is this a pass or fail test for the ICC as an institution, maybe in its history?
Yeah, again, I think you have to remember that there was already an investigation open against Benjamin Netanyahu going back to 2014 during the Gaza massacre then. And so, the ICC, when we look at it, although it was not Kareem Khan who was in charge of the prosecution's office, was Ms. Bensouda, who got herself a lot of trouble when she started investigating the alleged war crimes committed by the U.S. military in Afghanistan. She was threatened to, get prohibited from traveling to the United States and to get exposed to sanctions. We should remind our listeners that since 2002 and the Hague Invasion Act, the U.S. government has essentially, adopted a bill that allows the U.S. military to go to The Hague and extract their nationals to the extent they were to be detained there. So, it's something that started out as a kind of a honeymoon back in the late 90s under the Clinton administration. And as soon as the neocon-driven administration of George W. Bush came in, involving, of course, John Bolton at the time as a national security advisor and then permanent U.S. ambassador to the UN, the tone drastically changed. And so, it's something that remains to be seen. But again, there was an investigation open against Netanyahu stemming back from the events in 2014 in Gaza. So this is a long time in coming. And again, owing to the current sequence, entering its, 7th, 8th months now, there was no other possibility. I mean, the court was under extreme pressure to do something. I mean, just think about it. George Clooney's wife, Amal Clooney, herself actually came out somewhat as part of a group of experts and endorsed, the issuance of an arrest warrant as well, just a few days ago. So that's another marker right here that somehow there is a change in tone in certain circles. And this might actually be politically motivated by the fact that among the circles of powers in Washington or even in Davos, because somehow now it's more like a transnational cartel, to the extent the Israeli project brand ought to be somehow remaining viable, they have to operate a change in casting. And you have to remember that within Zionism, yes, Zionism is somewhat of a monolith ideology as far as what it seeks to accomplish, but there are somehow variations even within Zionism. And I think Netanyahu represents this kind of hardcore, Jabotinsky-like, nationalistic, that it's not a coincidence that he got along well with Donald Trump. He's a nationalist, whereas there's another face of Zionism which is more about some kind of a smooth approach, this kind of a globalist Soros-like approach to essentially reaching the same goals but doing it differently. And so it might also be somehow this Kareem Khan warrant sequence, an expression of an internal conflict, which has now.
Yeah, we got a clip. I want to play this. Here's a clip. I think you alluded to this earlier. This is from the ICC head lawyer here, prosecutor Kareem Khan. Let's go ahead and roll this. I want to get your reaction to this, Arnaud.
Of the individual is the protection of babies. I mean, these are fundamental American values that should engender bipartisan support. Now, of course, this situation, unfortunately, lies on the San Andreas fault of international politics and strategic interests. And of course, I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me. We don't view it like that. This court is the legacy of Nuremberg. This court is a sad indictment of humanity. This court should be the triumph of law over power and brute force. Grab what you can, take what you want, do what you will, and we're going to simply be we're not going to be dissuaded by threats or any other activities, because in the end we have to fulfill our responsibilities as prosecutors, as the men and women of the office, as judges, as the registry.
I mean, that's strong words there, brave words by Kareem Khan, the British lawyer there, barrister. But how realistic is that? I mean, let's not be naive, Arnaud. In this current environment, we're starting to, seeing European leaders assassination attempts right now. Lots of a whole bevy of dirty tricks in the past. How far will the powers go in order to dissuade members of this court, judges and so forth, threats? Who knows? Maybe more. Maybe they might take action, threaten their physical safety. I mean, certainly the ICJ, the ICC, this becomes a problem for Israel and for the United States as well, because then that changes the whole global narrative. The court of public opinion suddenly is backed up by an actual court on a major issue. We haven't had to confront this before. This is the first time, Arnaud.
Yes, but the ramifications again of that, there is a U.S. election coming up, and that this flare up in the long-standing Israeli-Palestinian conflict has had as a direct effect to erode the incumbent president's base. And so this is a calculus that must be taken into account. There's a lot of Jewish American federal officials who have really showed dismay about Netanyahu's unwillingness to somehow show restraint. They haven't gone as far as saying, you are committing genocide. You won't hear them say that, but they are getting embarrassed themselves. And we've had actually a lot of interesting verbal jousting between people like Levin. I forgot his first name. He has a show on Fox.
Mark Levine.
Mark Levine. Yeah, Mark Levine.
He's blowing a gasket. He's blowing a gasket along with Lindsey Graham.
He's been going after Chuck Schumer, and so now we have Chuck Schumer on one side and Levine on the other side, and so
two Zionists fighting each other.
Yes.
Internecine warfare in the United States. Incredible.
So I think this is again the U.S. election with all its implication, the stakes, and obviously it's connected to obviously what's been going on in Ukraine, and everything is interrelated, and so the incumbent administration cannot afford to somehow damage its own base. If they're going to go for re-election, they've got to make sure they don't shoot themselves in the foot, and this has been kind of a festering wound now. I mean, I don't think within the first 3 months or so they thought much of it, but as we enter 2024, it's the final stretch, and now this thing is just getting out of hand. And so obviously we start seeing cracks now within hardcore Zionist community. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, and it's important, as you say, Arnaud. Look at this through the frame of the 2024 election. In other words, that's going to have an effect on which direction things will swing between now and November. After November, hey, all bets are off on so many issues. But from now till November, that's important, and that might determine which direction things are going to swing. Arnaud, we're talking about this incredible development this week. Monday came, lo and behold, there it was, an actual filing from the International Criminal Court naming Israeli leaders in there. Now, continuing reading down the complaint, we find it also includes 3 Hamas officials. Now, initially, Arnaud, I looked at this as a quid pro quo. I thought this must have been the sort of contingency. This must have been the requirement to put Israelis in the dock. You need to also file and put Hamas, 3 Hamas leaders in the dock, like for like, to somehow even this out, to assuage the fury coming from the United States and its allies potentially. But I think there's a little more than that involved here. That was my initial assessment, but I've kind of been persuaded to look at this more broadly. I'll play a clip in a few minutes from Dan Kovalek. He's a human rights lawyer, formerly of Pittsburgh University. He's in America. We'll play that and get his analysis on that. But what are your initial thoughts on the inclusion of 2 military leaders and then 1 political leader who's in Doha, which I found to be very strange? But anyway, what do you think the chances are of these charges sticking?
Well, I guess we should mention that those individuals already expressed their willingness to provide material, owing to the fact that it is somewhat ludicrous that they would be accused of the things that the court has retained against them. A lot of it involves, and again, that takes us to the propaganda, the wave, and the unleashing of propaganda that's been inundating the airwaves ever since October 7th. I mean, we all remember, references to decapitated babies and woman raped, and I mean, just ludicrous things, that physically, could not be done. I mean, there was references made to babies being strung up on a one of those lines that you use to dry clothes, which makes no sense. But the more, the bigger the better. The bigger the lie, this is what it's all about. It just creates this sense of consideration, in the audience, and to the extent, the Palestinian resistance really gets a media treatment in the West that makes them look and sound and appear like some kind of bloodthirsty, And today there was actually a footage immediately released in response to a footage initially peddled by the Israelis, which pertained to show the Hamas placarding, about 4 or 5 Israeli female soldiers, which we've identified as, the dancing Israelis, right next to the fence, of the Gaza
TikTok video. Right. Yeah, they did a TikTok video in uniform, right. But it was being pushed out at the same time as the ICC announcement. Was that an information ops job by Tel Aviv to kind of, create a distraction and maybe some confusion? They said that these were like party goers, these girls who were hostage, but actually they're IDF soldiers, and they were taken directly from the military base at the time on October 7th. Mm-hmm. It looked like this was an intentional, and it was also a mistranslation in the video that was being put out by Israelis to say that they wanted to get them pregnant, and they're again demonizing their Palestinian captors. It just seemed to me the timing of this, Arnaud, was uncanny.
Yes, absolutely. It's almost caricature, in a way, and to be sure, Hamas responded by issuing another video where they actually are squatting a settler house, and there are kids there, and they are making sure that the kids are not scared off, that they're somehow appeased, for the time that they're, remaining in the dwelling. And the Israeli woman who's there, their mother, even relates, and this was actually a video that was published 7 months ago. And she said that basically, they were very polite. They said, we're Muslims, we're not like animals or anything like this. Kids are kids; they have nothing to do with this. And one of them even, politely asked if he could, take a bite to eat before they left the house. So, obviously, you have to remain cautious, and not get caught in either side of what is essentially a propaganda war. It's an informational war. But there's definitely a contrast between what one side, seems to portray the other one, and what the other one really, seems to be showing in effect. We also have those testimonials from freed hostages, who, for most of them, went out of their way and thanked their captors for having been, attended to. One of them, needed some medical treatment, and everything was somewhat done to make sure that the medicine was provided to the one of the hostages. It's only afterward, about a couple of weeks later, that one of them, was a young girl, must have been 18 years old. She somehow was pushed on Israeli media to, somehow come up with a story that was a complete 180 degrees from what she had, initially stated as she was leaving her captivity. And so, again, we have to be extremely prudent and cautious about, again, what is another dimension of a war. It's a some would say it's a massacre, but as far as between Hamas and the IDF, yes, it is a war, and everyone, both sides are trying to sway public opinion, and so far, owing to some of the footages we've seen of IDF soldiers just blowing up mosques, civilian infrastructure.
Burning libraries, yes. Blowing up universities. I mean, it's just it's endless. I mean, I want to play this video, which Dan Kovlek, American human rights lawyer, posted. I think it kind of sheds light on the legal filing on the Hamas side of this docket. Let's go ahead and roll this video.
So quite exciting happenings from the International Criminal Court, the ICC, today, which is based in The Hague in the Netherlands. It has issued arrest warrants for President Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, his defense minister Gallant, and a leader of Hamas as well. What a lot of people may not know is, how did the ICC get jurisdiction in this case? Because many people may know that Israel is not a party to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Neither is the U.S., by the way, even though both countries love the ICC to go after their adversaries. But you know who did sign on to the Rome Statute of the ICC? Hamas. And in fact, Hamas said that they are willing to fully cooperate with the ICC in any prosecution of its leaders. And this is an interesting fact, because, of course, Israel and the U.S. are saying, oh, they don't recognize these warrants. This is outrageous. They're not going to cooperate. In fact, some U.S. senators threatened before the warrants were issued that if they were issued, and if Israeli leaders were arrested and sent to the Hague in the Netherlands, the U.S. would invade the Hague to free those people. So it's Hamas, in fact, that is more the party respecting international law than the U.S. or Israel. And that's what makes the case very interesting. But also what makes it exciting is that really this is the first time the ICC, since it came into effect, I think in 2002, if I'm not mistaken, so well over 20 years ago, that it's actually gone after high-ranking Western leaders. Up till now, the ICC has only successfully prosecuted African leaders. In fact, some people disparage it as the International Court of Africa. And now the ICC is showing maybe it's willing to actually apply the law equally to the countries of the North and the South, to the powerful countries and the weak alike. So we shall have to see.
Was powerful symbolism behind Dan on his living room wall there. Che Guevara and Al-Aqsa Mosque over the right and left shoulder. I love it, actually. That Dan's a great, fantastic character, a great author as well. So what'd you make of that analysis, Arnaud, that Hamas is more than willing to be named and more than willing to cooperate with the ICC? So according to Dan's analysis, the only party that is respecting international law in this case is Hamas. Is he right?
Yes, he's right, because first of all, I mean, you have to remember that Gaza is not Israel. It's the Gaza Strip, so it's part of a future Palestinian state. Although for the reason I mentioned earlier, it's going to take a lot of creativity to somehow make it, a viable construct. But Hamas was elected democratically in 2006, and even earned a very large voting endorsement in the West Bank. I was in Nablus in 2005, and I remember Nablus is a Palestinian Authority-run city, but Hamas garnered a lot of support owing to their social work and tending to people who really live with not much of an income, and so it's a legitimate quasi-state actor, I would say. And this petition that Hamas filed with the ICC to somehow get recognized, goes back years. So this is not like something recent. And so when the U.S. senators or the U.S. administration says that the ICC has no jurisdiction, they are wrong. And the Palestinian Authority actually, from what I recall, also joined in this. So had what is going on in Gaza gone on, and it is somewhat going on, we just don't talk about it that much because the bulk of the attention is in Gaza. But in the West Bank, they would have jurisdiction as well, because the PA also asked to get some kind of a status as somewhat of a signatory, or they would at least allow the ICC to come in and document crimes being perpetrated there. So it is. Yes.
Recently, and the timing of this, Arnaud, is phenomenal because, listen, Israel in the last 48 hours has raided an Associated Press stand-up camera live feed facility because Al Jazeera was subscribing to their live feed along with 300 other media outlets that subscribe to the same live feed in southern Israel. So that Israel did that, and then suddenly AP releases a story here, Arnaud, takeaways from AP's examination of how 2 debunked accounts of sexual violence on October 7th originated. Arnaud, this is incredible. So are the mainstream media pulling their finger out as well and challenging Israel? Because there's a little bit of a battle going on here. Israel hits AP hits back at Israel, saying that 2 of their big sexual assault stories on October 7th have been debunked. This is, to me, incredible, Arnaud. I never thought I'd see this happen so quickly. This stuff usually happens years later, right? Not like during the heat of the moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, it took 7 months to be sure, but better late than never. But remember that one of the first media outlets to actually debunk most of those October 7th and a few days thereafter stories were Israeli medias. I mean, Israeli medias enjoy a lot more press freedom than Western outlets. But now, the last few weeks, we've seen a lot of somehow pushback from Western media. We've seen especially a segment on Piers Morgan involving, a propagandist. Some would call it the son of Hamas or something. But he was completely ridiculed. There was also this incident, although this led to the firing of the anchor, involving one of the spokesperson for the Israeli government, and she would not let him go on some of the inconsistencies that he was trying to peddle. And we've had also Al Jazeera, which was kicked out recently as well. So I think too much is too much at some point. And the Israeli always tend to err on that side of being measured in how they communicate. It's always kind of like in your face, and they don't relent. And it gets to be a situation which, at some point, even the most unabashed supporters of Israel, they don't want to be caught in this situation where their own credibility would be shattered beyond repair.
Absolutely. Arnaud Develay, author of Foreign Entanglements. I don't know if we have that image to throw up on screen. Arnaud's new book. Fantastic. This is available on Amazon and also fine bookstores wherever you are, especially in the English-speaking world. Arnaud, thank you very much for joining us on TNT this week.
Thank you, Patrick.
Really appreciate his analysis. And again, check out this amazing book by Arnaud, Foreign Entanglements. Look, top of the hour news headlines coming up. We'll continue our news and analysis on the other side. I'm Patrick Henningsen. Stay with us. We got another hour coming up.